it showing something different? Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you enjoyed a little bit of break, a little bit of lunch. So hopefully you all have the energy, enough energy to continue with the rest of this beautiful event. So my name is Elmira, and I'm associate professor in built environment from Victoria University, Melbourne. But I'm also heavily and mainly involved with engagement and impact with industry. So I'm looking after translational type of research, making sure that the voice of the research is being heard. And that's why today I'm just presenting some of the very preliminary results for what we did with City of Melbourne and Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, which we call it DELP, although they changed their name to DCAR now. But also, I would like to, if I have enough time, I would like to talk about some of the initiatives that are currently happening in Melbourne in terms of green infrastructures and the works that have been happening with the communities. So, I'd like to start my presentations. I know we are in the last day of the conference, and all of you guys have already had a look to the summary of IPCC report, the latest one. But I would like to echo some of the key findings that have been raised. Climate adaptation and mitigation and cities are still the focus. That's a no-brainer. But if there will be no immediate actions to cut the emissions, then we will face more extremes, more climate extremes. So there is a need to take an immediate actions to make things better. Okay, so we are in a very complex situation. We are in cities, and we are living in cities that are expanding in a very, very rapid rate. And that's why we are actually exposing ourselves to a more and increased urban overheating. Urban overheating, it's not just the adverse impacts on the peak electricity demand or on UHI. It's also on the public health of elderlies, those with cardiovascular disease, and especially those with low socioeconomic background, those whose their housing don't have even air conditioning system to be turned on during the heat wave. So the first few days might be okay because the indoor air temperature gets to somewhere 27, 28. But as we continue with the heat waves, and as the heat wave days with the heat waves increases, and the air temperature exceeds certain threshold, then we will see an exponential increase in the heat-related mortality and morbidity rates. So that's why it's very, very important to think about mitigation strategies. And we've seen heat waves all around the world: Chicago, Eastern Europe, Melbourne 2009, Black Friday, and the most recent one, January 2019, where in northern part of Victoria especially, we see a temperature exceeds even about 45 degrees. So if we have a closer look to Melbourne, we are looking at having a population of 8 million by 2050. And what it means is construction boom, infrastructure boom, a lot of replacement of natural vegetative coverage with impervious surfaces. So obviously more hot days. Okay. And looking at UHI history in Melbourne has shown that there is a record of temperature difference between the CBD and the outskirts. That temperature ranges from 1 to up to 7 degrees based on the methodology, based on the instrumentation that they use in their research. But the problem is there, and we need to actually start thinking about it, because if we're not thinking about it, we will see something like this: the increase in the number of the hot days across the US. But the good news is we have an opportunity to save the lives of people by just a slight reduction in the air temperature. All the past studies have shown that even if you're talking about a very low number in temperature, there's still a chance to save people's lives. So, And that's our responsibility as researchers, built environment professionals, climatologists, engineers to collaborate and work together to make that happen, to actually hit that climatic targets. So this project that I'm going to talk about today, if I want to classify it, it will be under mitigation strategy, green infrastructure and green roof strategy. So City of Melbourne has developed and implemented a number of different greening initiatives across the years. Plan Melbourne 2015 was the first one that I was involved in a long time ago, and this is the one of the recent ones, if not the most recent, which is looking at some of the greening initiatives that Melbourne City is planning to do. So this time is not just about doubling up the green roofs and green walls, but it's also about finding a partnership between private, public sectors to actually co-fund the greening initiatives. Or it's about developing industry standards in order to smooth the process of installing green roofs or green walls. So as a result of the vision that you see in front of you, there are targets, and as a result of targets, we have action items. So the project I'm going to talk about today is really the first action item, which is looking at greening our rooftop project. And the second one is about greening the laneways in Melbourne. If you've been, you know there are lots of beautiful laneways with a lot of shops, restaurants, and cafes. So the second action item is looking at greening those laneways. And the third one is looking at make the information accessible and publicly available for people so they can see, okay, these are the areas that they don't have greening, so let's think about them. Okay, so in order to promote and encourage the communities to actually get involved in the greening initiatives. So the Green Our Rooftop project is looking at greening the Treasury building, and the Treasury building is this photo that you see in front of you. Is a state government building. I'm not going through the long process of why they selected this building, but just long the story short, this building is selected because of being situated in a high-profile site. So it could maximize the exposure to public, which could promote one of the core objectives of this research, which was inspiring others to have their own green roof so they can actually see the benefits of it. So why this project is important? One of the novelty about this project is its design concept. Well, I'm actually paying a lot of attention to the design concept because I'm an architect by background and urban designer, and then my research is into environmental planning and design. But one of the novelty of this project is its design concept because they wanted to bring a garden of Victorian landscape on a plan of a green roof. And what it means is that in Victoria, there is a very diverse range of plantation and landscape, and they wanted to extract that and build it onto a map of a green roof. So they actually used a lot of, again, grid pixelation algorithms, which I'm not going through in depth and detail, but enough to know that we have this color-coded map in front of us with 67 different plants. And I don't remember how many bioregions we did have, but there was a quite complex green roof to model. So it wasn't just the diversity of the plants, which was the focus of the research, but also it was the topography of Victorian plains that they were trying to bring in to this green roof plan. So the designers, they used the elevation from the sea level across the state and abstracted it into a map of the green roof into 4 different heights. So if you have a look to the cross section of the green roof, you can see there are bioregions which are higher and the bioregions which are lower. So the higher ones, they're trying to actually mimic the areas like Gibson Highland, and the lower ones, they're trying to mimic the other areas that are lower in topography. So what we were trying to do in this, okay, 5 minutes. So what we were trying to do in this project was to see how this proposed green roof can actually impact the air temperature at the rooftop level, and how the design settings of the proposed green roof can be further optimized to maximize the cooling impact. Because the project was in its initial phase and it hasn't been implemented yet, but that's why there was a place to, again, look back to some of the design settings of the green roof to see what it can be done. We also had a look to the pedestrian thermal comfort, but not just at the street level, but also at the rooftop level, which I'm going to show you. But before that, our data collection we use the weather data from the closest BOM station located in Olympic Park, and we also used the climatic data from the portable weather station, which was installed at the rooftop level, because we wanted to have obviously the local access to the local climatic data as well. So we used MVMet for a number of reasons, which because of the lack of the time, I'm not going to actually talk about. But for certain, I think one of the key reasons was the need to have a high resolution map at the end in terms of spatial distribution of the air temperature. So I think that one was one of the main reasons, given the diversity of the plants that we had. So we started with setting up the input area file, the configuration file, forcing the weather data, and we started with the base case scenario with no green roof. So what at the moment exists at the Treasury building. So we then will obviously, after each simulation, there should be a verification. That's a must, non-negotiables. So we actually compared the air temperature recorded with the simulated, and we achieved a quite reasonable agreement with the R score that we got with 0.9. That's why we continued with simulating the proposed green roof scenario. And this is where I think it was the most challenging part, because in NVMet, within the tool itself, yes, there is a database of plants, but because this tool is mainly developed in Europe, most of the plant databases are from Europe. But we're dealing with Victorian landscape, right? So there was a need to go through the database, and that's why we actually developed a Python-based script to make that happen. And we start modifying the plant features to mimic this as much as possible. Not always possible in certain areas, I should say, and confess, but at least mimicking the closest scenario to what they're proposing. So our preliminary results show a 1.5 degree reduction in the air temperature at the rooftop level. And we also looked at some of the potential optimization scenarios that we could have on some of the design settings. So we looked at parameters such as leaf area index, we looked at soil moisture, we looked at what could happen if we can combine this with tree coverage. And again, our preliminary results, and I think we are running about 25 different scenarios at the moment to see which one can be further optimized. But our preliminary results show that if our green roof is well irrigated and if the leaf area index is set at 2.5 average, then we could actually receive the maximum thermal performance. In terms of the thermal comfort, similar to the previous studies, no significant difference at the pedestrian level, but a slight reduction in physiological equivalent temperature at the rooftop level, but not that significant. So I'll just wrap up by saying that this project is just a small step towards achieving what we are planning as part of our action item for IPCC and all the agreements that we have. But there is a need to not just change what decision makers are thinking, but also what communities are thinking. And that's why hopefully by the end of this project, we will have a forum where we can actually share the outputs with the community, because it's very important to make sure that the results are being seen, are being visible, not just nationally, but also internationally. So we are actually thinking of not the exact this project, but sharing the results of how to apply innovative greening technologies internationally, because every single nation is responsible to achieve climatic targets. Thank you very much.
Maybe 2 questions?
Hi, thanks for your presentation on the mitigation strategies in Melbourne. I'm Daniel from Singapore. In June this year, the local media showcased your chief heat officers of Melbourne. You have actually 2 of them. So I'm wondering if this actually gives you an advantage over other cities who do not have them. It's quite fascinating that you even have appointed chief heat officers for the city, which a privilege that we don't have in Asia or at least in Australia so far. You are the only city in this part of the world. Thank you.
Yeah, is it what it is? Okay. Yes, thank you very much. I think this was just a compliment rather than a question. But well, in Singapore and mainly Southeast Asian countries, I've worked and lived there, so I know there are lots of initiatives already in place. And because the context is quite different from Melbourne, it's quite, I'm not saying it's easier to achieve, but the key box to tick is the management of resources. Melbourne, especially Melbourne, I'm talking on behalf of Melbourne because I've only lived there in Australia. I don't know about the other states. But Melbourne has a really, really special circumstances because even within Melbourne, you're talking about areas which are greener, areas which are drier. And there is a need to catch up with those standards, those national and international standards. For example, in west of Melbourne, this is the more drier parts. Now there are initiatives to catch up with the east, which is greener. So we have initiatives called Greening the West. If you want to Google Greening the West, and there are people coming from different stakeholders, different organizations, different even communities getting together, discussing the challenges, opportunities, and there was really a need to have positions like this.
Thank you.
Oh,
It seems
thank
like we
you.
might have to move to the next one. So our next speaker is Dr. Ling Zhang from Nanjing University, talking about green roof and cool roof in a mega city in China.